Sander Levin, who is a Democrat from Michigan, and Congressman Levin is also co-chair of the Congressional Executive Commission on China, and he joins us from Capitol Hill. Sander, thank you so much for joining us. Congressman Levin, let's talk about the currency debate. It's interesting because even among and along party lines, the yuan is considered to be undervalued by Democrats and Republicans. But what are you going to do about it? Do you think the U.S. should be stepping up here, maybe getting a backbone and labeling China a currency manipulator?
No, I think clearly the U.S. has to step up to it. China's had a policy all these years, a clear policy, and it was based on essentially controlling its currency, making sure that the dollar was stronger so that they could essentially sell to the U.S. and it would be difficult for us to sell to them. And they've combined that with their investment policies. So China's had a clear policy. They have a major challenge of finding jobs. The problem is we haven't had in this country a policy. It's been kind of fits and starts, and that won't work because the impact of an undervalued currency with our second or third largest trader, it depends on the year, that doesn't work for us. It doesn't work for our businesses. It doesn't work for our workers. It doesn't work for our jobs. So we have to, you're right, I think you're implying, we have to stand up. We have to have a clear American policy, and we haven't had one.
And Congressman Levin, does that include Tim Geithner at the U.S. Treasury slapping the label on China as a currency manipulator, though?
We're going to be meeting with the Treasury Department, I hope, in the next few days. I think the value of our hearing today was that it propels further need for discussions with Treasury because the majority feeling, if not the unanimous feeling there, was that there is a problem and we have to face up to it. That China essentially has a currency that is deliberately undervalued, and that has consequences not only for the U.S., it has consequences for its other competitors. So the present situation of their having very little consumption compared to us, much more production compared to us, that imbalance has to simply change.
Yeah, Congressman Levin, when you say facing up to this yuan policy issue, what does that mean from the U.S. government side? What are you going to do about it? What are you suggesting here?
That we step up to the plate, and we're going to be talking to the Treasury Department. We in Congress want to play a role in this. We don't want to simply be left with, here it is, there isn't anything we can do about it. The hearing emphasized today the need for Congress and for the whole Washington scene to step up to the plate. In the past, I think the feeling was, well, we'll talk and kind of let it be. But that kind of hands-off policy isn't working. It isn't working for the U.S. It isn't really working well enough for China, and it surely isn't working with other competitors. So I'm not precisely sure what will happen between now and April 15th. But the status quo is unsustainable, and we have to devise a plan, a policy, and we haven't had it vis-a-vis China's currency except to talk. And talk is not a policy.
Yeah, and Congressman Levin, when you say to face up to China, does that include maybe levying tariffs here, maybe slapping on levies on Chinese-made goods?
Well, that was considered at the hearing. And look, there are various ways to address this problem. Bilaterally, that hasn't worked. Unilaterally, and you mentioned one alternative. But we have to consider what is consistent with our international obligations. Another way is to try to proceed multilaterally. That hasn't worked because it really hasn't been tried. And that includes IMF, it includes WTO. And so I think the administration, again, has to step up to the plate and make a decision. How does it shape a policy that is more likely to work than the talks that have gone on in previous years under previous administrations?
And Congressman Levin, earlier I spoke to Congressman Brady, also of the House Ways and Means Committee. He said it seems that there's a unanimous outlook that the yuan is undervalued by maybe 25%. If China, let's say, does appease and say, well, we're going to move maybe 2 to 3% on the yuan this year, is that enough to maybe, I guess, douse the flames for a bit?
No, it's not just a question of toning down the flames. What it is the need for there to be a policy and for China to be part of it, but to follow it. Essentially what it's been doing is saying we'll talk, but we'll essentially do it our way, regardless of the consequences for everybody else. And in a global economy, that doesn't work. It just doesn't work. You have to try to have a policy that countries buy into. I accept the fact there are tensions. I respect the fact there are differences of opinion and deep ones. But the status quo today, with a clear China policy built on essentially rigging its currency, it's 25 to 40%, and the U.S. not having a policy, that doesn't work for us. It doesn't work for our businesses and workers. I don't think it works for other competitors of China, and I don't think it works for the global economy. That's where we are.
Yeah.
We've got to move off the status quo.
Okay, Congressman Levin, I want to quickly move on to another issue taking place in China these days, which is internet freedom. First, it was Google, who have threatened to pull out of the country. It looks like they're taking steps to do that. And now we have GoDaddy.com saying today that they'll stop offering new China domain names. What do you think of these companies, these U.S. companies, having problems operating in China right now?
No, I support what our companies are doing. China has to be pressured. And I use the word pressured because it isn't easy to get them to change. You can't have trade. They talk about free trade. You can't have free trade when they shut down your communications. And that's what this is all about. There's also the aspect of human freedom in China. But both on a commercial basis and a human rights basis, the China policy doesn't work for American businesses, and I don't think it works for the cause of human rights. Companies have to be able to communicate without a fear of being blocked, without a fear of their being stolen in terms of their messages. There needs to be confidentiality. There needs to be the ability to communicate. And China needs to realize that our companies will not accept their being really handicapped by policies that interfere with their basic freedoms.
Yeah, Congressman Levin, one more question for you. Recently, I was speaking to Morgan Stanley's Asia chairman, Stephen Roach, and he says it really is the height of hypocrisy for a government like the United States to go into another country like China and really criticize and try to sway them on their own domestic policies. Imagine if it was the other way around. I mean, how would the U.S. government deal with this?
Look, I know Mr. Roach well, and I know that's his attitude. We're not going into China. China is a partner and a competitor. We're trying to straighten out problems, and we are trying to take steps to get our house in order. And I've told this to Mr. Roach. This administration, we just passed a health bill, and we had to pay for it. We understand the need to get our house in order. The fact that it isn't yet fully in order after years of it being out of order under a different regime is not an excuse for China saying it will do nothing. When a key official in China says that if we take action, it's protectionism, when they're the ones with the way they rig their currency, they're the protectionists. We're the ones who are trying to promote open and free and fair trade.
Okay, Congressman, thank you so much for sharing your time today. That's Congressman Sander Levin, who's the chair of the House Ways and Means Committee, joining us there from Capitol Hill.